Hello, and welcome to Nuts About Baseball, a podcast that will entertain you with discussions involving everything baseball. I'm your host, Joe Grimme, and I appreciate you joining me. Sit back, relax, and enjoy as I share my passion for the sport we call America's pastime. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Nuts About Baseball. I am your host, Joe Grimme, and I am thrilled to have someone on the podcast today that I, quite frankly, never imagined would be able to join me because of his busy schedule. But welcome today, Nick Krall, to the episode. Thanks for joining me, Nick.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Well, you're a very busy man, and I want to talk a little bit first about you yourself because you're always the front man and the spokesperson for the team, the Cincinnati Reds, about moves that they make. But let's hear a little bit about you personally. I know you grew up in Pennsylvania, and of course, you can only believe half of what you read on the internet. So I had to do a little research here. But you played baseball growing up, right?
I did. Yeah, I played all the way through high school. I tried to walk on college when I got to LSU, but I played in a semi-pro league in the summers, Wood Bat League, which was fun. Played with a lot of guys. Some guys played minor league baseball. Some guys played in college, so it was really competitive. But I really wanted to play at LSU, but it didn't get to happen. But it was a fun experience.
Did you have other colleges looking at you in high school that you might consider?
Yeah, I mean, you could have. I could have gone to a handful of schools. When I was done when I got cut at LSU, there were opportunities to transfer, which the coaches were great about. But at the end of the day, I didn't really want to go there. I wanted my degree from LSU, and I loved it there, and so that's why I stayed.
Why did you choose LSU?
I grew up and I grew up an Orioles fan. And Ben McDonald was the number one pick of the Orioles when I was a kid. And when I went to a minor league game and he gave me time one day and I just became an LSU fan. And it's kind of funny. It's just like I was probably the only guy in Pennsylvania growing up in the early 90s or late 80s, early 90s that was an LSU fan. And all my buddies knew it. And then they went to the College World Series in 91 and then again in 93. And, I became a huge fan of LSU. And, when they became a really good baseball program, I wanted to see if I could play there. And that's why I wanted to go there.
Well, that certainly has stayed consistent with their success since then, obviously recently with Paul Skeens.
Yeah, it's been good to watch. I mean, it's a really good program.
Still a fan, I assume?
Yeah. I love to go down to football games and still have a lot of buddies down there, which is great. And it's still a big fan.
I'm sure you were happy to see Joe Burrow come our way.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of great football players. There's a lot of great football players have come out of there, and it's been fun to. I'm a football fan. It's fun to be able to watch those guys.
So after college, you moved on, and I think you started with the New Jersey Cardinals.
Yeah, so it was a team in the New York Penn League, and they're a now defunct league. It was a short season league. I graduated on a Friday. I drove up from Louisiana to New Jersey. Started work on Monday, and when I first started work, it was there was about 15 interns. At the end of the year, there were 3 of us left, and we got to do all kinds of stuff. The staff there was great. They just let you do things. They let you do things that were that you might not have been ready for, but whether it was helping with merchandise or running the game day staff or working in media relations, the grounds crew, the stadium operations, selling outfield signs, you did everything because it was such a small operation. And it was a great group of people that really just let me do things. And there was some, you messed things up, but at the same time, you learned a lot.
How did you find that opportunity in New Jersey coming from LSU?
So what's funny is a buddy of mine who was at LSU, who played baseball, who is now with the Padres. He was the assistant GM with the Rangers a few years ago. Mike Daly worked there. He said, "Hey, it's a great spot." He worked there and played summer ball at the Collegiate Summer League nearby. And he said it's a good spot just for the summer to get your feet wet. And I was like, all right, because I was asking about it and when they offer the job. But you go to the job fair, the old job fair at the winter meetings, and when you do that, you just put your resume in and you have interviews right there. But since then, there's a lot of folks that have worked there in different years. Ends up our assistant GM Sam Grossman was a clubhouse manager there. The clubhouse manager. The year I was there was the guy who's the traveling secretary for, or the director of travel for the Cardinals, Ernie Moore. Jeff Groppe, our other assistant GM, worked there in a different year. Manny Colon, who works for the A's, worked there. It's pretty funny how so many people that have worked in baseball operations actually started there.
That is funny. You were one of the last three standing, but then you moved on to work for the Oakland Athletics for a couple years, right?
Yeah. So at the end of the year, I went down to LSU. I worked at a temp agency in the fall. Lived there, and just basically did whatever, and just kind of wanted to live a little bit of the college life that I didn't get to have in the summer after graduation. So hung out and tried to figure out what my next move was going to be, and started sending out resumes and doing what you do, and went back to the winter meetings and ended up having an interview with the Visalia team. I got offered a few full-time jobs in minor league baseball to stay, and I just didn't really want to do that. I wanted to work in baseball operations, so I had to figure out how to do it. So I went to got a job as a clubhouse manager with Visalia Oaks at the time, and it was an A's affiliate. The clubhouse guy was an A's employee, so they ended up hiring me. I got to go to spring training with the A's for minor league camp. And then I went to Visalia. And when I went to Visalia, I got to, you get to learn live life like a minor league player. And it was a lot of fun with, a lot of people, some of the guys I still keep in contact with. And you learned a lot. You learned a lot.
Yeah.
And then after that season, I worked for didn't have a job for the fall. So I got to know the head groundskeeper in Arizona. He needed some help. So I said, hey, he said, yeah, sure, come on. So I ended up working with him and working with that group from fall and then the spring, and then became friends with him. Ended up actually living at his house while his wife was in dental school. And it's funny, like just the people you meet and the people that you meet along the way, and where they are as well. He's still friends today with those guys. And then in the spring, I ended up getting an internship in baseball operations in Oakland, and I took the job and was the bat boy that year. Steve Yushnich, the clubhouse manager, took care of me, and I said, hey, I need help to bat boy. Do you want to do this? And I was like, sure, I'll do it. I needed the extra money because at the time we didn't really get paid for an internship, and it was expensive to live in the Bay Area. So I did whatever I could to make ends meet. It was a great experience. I mean, I couldn't ask for more from what they did, and whether it was Billy Bean, Paul DePodesta, David Forst, Danny McCormick, that whole group just really took care of me. You got to go on scouting trips. I worked in the office in the mornings, and then would go down at night, and the coaching staff, the clubhouse manager, like all those guys were great to me.
Well, starting out as a bat boy to become what you are today is amazing. You started with the Reds in 2003. I don't think people realize how long you've been with the organization. I mean, that's over 20 years. How did you land the job at first with the Reds?
Well, when I was in Oakland, we had a video system called Bats, and we were one of the first teams to have it. I asked David Forst, who's the GM now, hey, can I just take some of this? He's like, yeah, sure, do what you want. And I would just take extra work home, and I'd learn how to chart games. And Dan Feinstein was a video guy then, and those guys would help me, and I'd take it home. I had a VCR. I lived in an apartment on an air mattress, and I shared a bathroom with 14 people. But I would take a VCR and a laptop home, and I would lay there on the floor, and I would basically just chart games, and it would help with the advanced stuff. And it was just I liked it. I got to learn it. It was fun. They allowed me to do it, and I can't thank them enough for that, because that gave me some experience to when the Reds opened the new stadium here. They had a video room, and they built a brand new video room, had bats, and they needed somebody to run it, and so they ended up getting the job.
Wow. That's funny. I don't want to offend you, but you sound like a baseball geek just like me.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, growing up, that's what we did. I had great guys that when I first started playing in that adult men's league, I was 16, and all the guys were older, and I just sat the bench for most of the season, and I played Legion on the other days that we didn't play, and it was a lot of fun just to be able to learn from those older guys. So just being able to learn about baseball and people that helped you out, it's been a lot of fun. But I really do love the game.
And I think, I mean, the title that I saw when you originally hired, Advanced Scout, is that right?
I think it was baseball operations assistant when I was first hired.
Okay. Clearly, you got there from all the hard work, but a lot of connections. I mean, is there even a path that you could suggest that anyone out there who's interested in doing the same thing might begin?
I mean, it's my path is different than a lot of other folks, but I think a lot of people have different paths. I think when you look at it, you have there are a lot of people have given you 5 minutes, right? And they've given you time. They've talked to you about trying to get into whatever field you're trying to get in, and it's just trying to make sure that you're there to learn. You're there to to work your butt off and learn and grow and see if, and be the best you can be. And I think that's it for any walk of life. And I think that's baseball's no different. I had some great mentors and some great people that have helped me over the years, and it's helped me it paid off.
Absolutely. I mean, I know your role, your title has changed over the years with the Reds. Have your duties really changed that much since you became the general manager to president of baseball operations, or not?
A little bit here and there. Just what maybe you're a little bit more involved in certain things, or you're more connected to certain people, but not. I would say not a ton.
Moto Federation is a DIY communal workspace and social lounge. We provide the tools, facility, and supplies for you to work on your own motorcycle. Beyond the workshops, we have a social lounge where members can meet to exchange ideas, share knowledge, attend workshops, and view product demonstrations. We are a rider's facility dedicated to learning, teaching, and repairing and restoring motorcycles. We embrace all forms of motorcycling, from scooters to trikes and everything in between. Learn more at motofed.com.
Tell me and tell the listeners a little bit about a typical day for you. Let's start out with, say, the off season. I mean, obviously you're doing a lot to try to improve the team, but what's a typical day for you from beginning to end?
I would say there's no typical day. So I tell people this a lot. We run in cycles, right? So you've got your major league cycle. If you start in the off season, you're trying to have your roster clean up once the day of the season ends, and then you try to figure out what you need to do to improve your roster for the next season. Then you're going through the off season trying to improve that roster. Then you get to spring training and you're trying to sort things out. You sort your roster out, and then you're going to you get to the season. You have your first couple months that you're trying to figure out who you are. Then you're trying to figure out the next 2 months, figure out what you need, and then the last 2 months you're just playing, and then you're kind of doing it all over again. So I think that then you layer in the scouting department. That is, you're starting. We had meetings last week or 2 weeks ago in January to figure out who your targets are, and then set your scheduling up. Then your guys go out and scout, and you have a draft in the middle of the season. Your international group is they have their signing day on January 15th, and then they're trying to sign their next class starting January 16th, and then going to tryouts and stuff. So you've got different schedules that go season to season. You've got your player development is obviously more in season, but then you're setting up for your stuff in the off season. So there's no typical day. It's more just how you navigate the season.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, I'm a huge fan. One of the reasons why I started this podcast a little over a year ago, a huge Reds fan in particular, and a member of a lot of these Facebook pages and groups. And you're the one out there talking to the media. You're pulling the trigger on these moves, and you're the face of the Reds. And you take a lot of heat and criticism. And I am one who personally defends you because it's not you who is opening up his checkbook. You're the one who is the one talking to the press and talking to the fans and explaining the reasoning behind these moves. I mean, there's so many people out there criticizing the organization and you in particular. How do you just let that go and not have that affect you in your everyday life? Because it's not you personally that should be attacked. It's quite frankly ownership and their budget that they give you.
Well, I mean, look, I think we are all, and as an organization, we're all trying to do what's best for the organization, and you always have to have the long view of the organization of what you're trying to do. And for us, I want to be able to build a team that is a sustainable winning organization over the course of a long haul, not just have a window here and a window there. And I think it's obviously it frustrates some people, but you're doing the best you can for your organization, and that's our goal. That's everybody in baseball operations is trying to figure out how to impact this organization on a long-term basis, and have a winning culture with this group. I think we're always going to be a team that's going to build through scouting and player development and our player pipeline and our analytics staff with that as well. Just acquiring players and building that through that player pipeline and getting guys to the big leagues. And I think that's going to be our goal and our main focus from every day and all throughout the season.
Well, I thought you did a great job last year. And I have to be honest, before this past weekend, I was not too optimistic. I was not looking forward to watching almost every game as I do. But then the trigger was pulled and a huge signing. Obviously, everybody knows Gino Suarez is back in town. Let me first publicly thank you and ownership and the Reds all together for signing him, because he's going to be a huge addition. How excited are you for that signing?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, just having him here yesterday, come in for his press stuff, and I haven't seen him in a few years, but at the same time, just a guy you've known for 7 years, a guy that you know what you're getting. He's going to come in, he's going to work his butt off, he's going to be a great mentor for the younger players, and he's going to be a presence in your lineup that should help everybody else should help everybody else around him. But I'm really excited to have him back.
Absolutely. You signed Blade and traded for Dane Myers. I would assume that you still see them contributing at some point, whether it's off the bench or starting in the outfield somewhere.
Yeah, I think that, we've got a handful of spots that are open and up for grabs. And, those guys are going to come into camp and challenge for spots. Blade had some pop last year. I think he had 17 doubles, 14 homers. Dane Myers has hit lefties over his career, so he's a good complement piece to a lot of guys, and he can really play center field. So, he's going to come in with a chance to compete with guys like Blake Dunn and Reese Hines, and hopefully they're taking steps forward. But, I think that, I'm really excited for that group to come in and compete for spots in spring training.
The pitching staff, I said it last year when I did a little preview on this podcast, that I felt like our staff from top to bottom was the best in the Central, and I think it is again. Obviously, Chase Burns was a great addition when he came up. Do you see him, as of right now, to be a solid starter in our rotation?
No, I think he's going to come in and compete for a spot. We've got guys like Rhett Lauder and Julian Aguiar and Brandon Williamson that are all coming back from injury last year.
Yeah.
And they're all in camp. They're all trying to take steps forward. Chase Petty struggled in AAA last year, but got a cup of coffee. And, he's a guy that the organization still feels has a chance to be a solid major league starter. So, these guys are going to come in and compete for a spot. And, when they do, it's we'll see what happens at the end of spring.
One guy that I'm excited to see play more, and I know everybody out there is as well, is Sal Stewart. Seems like a great young man and has got his head just on his shoulders the right way. What's your feeling on him and his ability to potentially crack that starting lineup?
Yeah, he's another one. He's going to have to come in and win a job. He's got a month in the big leagues. I think everybody wanted him up after Double A, but he was 21. I think we had 7 guys in spring training and big league camp that were 21 or younger last year.
Wow.
You have a lot of the guys like that, you get your seasoning, but then guys learn how to pitch to you at this level, and you got to figure out how to make those adjustments back. So he's got to continue to figure out how to make adjustments, but he's improved. He's lost weight. He's more agile right now coming into spring, which is great. So I'm excited to see where he is, but he's going to get some reps at first, second, third, DH, and just see what happens in spring training and where he fits best.
Matt McLean, obviously everybody wants him to bounce back. He's one of my favorites, and it was really frustrating to see him struggle last year. Have you had any conversations with him or heard from any of the coaches as to what he might have done in the offseason to change his ways?
Yeah, I think Matt came in and he had an up and down season. I think it was tough for him last year, but the one thing he did do was he played good defense at second base, and I think that's something that is it's something I think we kind of dismiss a little bit because the offense wasn't where we want it to be. But he was a solid everyday defender there, and I think that's something that he's got a good floor to him. So he's going to come in, and he's been working hard this offseason, trying to get himself back to where he was, make more contact, and just being able to use the field more and being able to drive the ball in the gaps, and that's going to go out of that. You're going to hit home runs in our ballpark doing that. So I'm really excited to see where he is coming into camp, and we'll see what happens.
I love the roster as it stands right now, but I know you're always looking to improve. Are there any particular pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to add before we get started with spring training?
I think you're always just trying to improve. I think, probably most likely minor league deals, guys that come in to compete for spots legitimately compete for spots in camp. But, you're always looking to improve. If there's something that comes up, then you got to take a look at it.
Yeah. Well, I'd be lying if I said that talking with you isn't a little bit surreal because honestly, I started this podcast a little over a year ago and never imagined I'd be talking to the president of baseball operations for my favorite team. Nick, I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You heading out to spring training soon?
Yeah, I leave on Friday, which is it'll be nice to get out of the weather.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to head out there with my wife here at the beginning of March and see a few games. Looking forward to that. I always love heading to Goodyear because it's just a phenomenal facility and they do a great job.
Oh, that's great. No, yeah, the people there that run the facility in Goodyear, they do a phenomenal job. It's a great community. There's a lot of stuff to do. Obviously, Phoenix is right there, but I do love Goodyear, and the people there going down for 2 months a year is really great.
Absolutely. It's been great talking to you. I learned some more about you personally. I wish you the best of luck in your career and as well to the Reds this season. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you having me.